Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome to another episode 2 of the Revert Corner. And I'm joined once again by my co-hosts, Karl and Matt. It's myself, Ed. And today we are having a really nice topic. It's workplace challenges as a new Muslim. And we want to dive into it, try and look at, different challenges people might face, whether that be navigating prayer breaks, handling different misconceptions or cultural issues at work. And as always, if you're a new Muslim or if you're just supporting reverts on their journey, this live stream is for everyone. Please do engage. Feel free to chat, join the discussion. We're trying to make this space for all and for everyone to share their ideas and ask questions. So please do join and ask questions, comments, so we can perhaps deal with them, perhaps in this episode or perhaps in other episodes as well. And as always, we're going to start the session with a ayah or a hadith. The ayah or the hadith of the day, which will be presented by my brother Matt. So Matt, without any further ado, please take it away.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. The verse for tonight's episode is verse 186 in the chapter Al Imran. Allah says in this verse, لَتُبْلَوُنَّ فِي أَمْوَالِكُمْ وَأَنفُسِكُمْ وَلَتَسْمَعُنَّ مِنَ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ وَمِنَ الَّذِينَ أَشْرَكُوا أَذًى كَثِيرًا وَإِن تَصْبِرُوا وَتَتَّقُوا فَإِنَّ ذَلِكَ مِنْ عَزْمِ الْأُمُورِ. The translation being, you believers will surely be tested in your wealth and yourselves, and you will certainly hear many hurtful words from those who were given the scripture before you, Jews and Christians, and from polytheists. But if you are patient and mindful of Allah and dutiful to Him, surely this is a resolve to aspire to. So Allah informs us in this verse that He will surely test us. Fi amwalikum, in our wealth, wa anfusikum, and within ourselves. Allah will test us maybe with loss of wealth, loss of money, maybe loss of jobs. And Allah will test us within our own selves, maybe by sickness or the death and loss of loved ones. Not only that, but we will also hear a lot of hurtful words from non-Muslims. They might criticize you for following the path of Islam. They might criticize your religion or your Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So what's the way out in this situation? Allah says, وَإِن تَصْبِرُوا وَتَتَّقُوا. If you are patient with being obedient to Him, patient by abstaining from prohibited things in a religion, and patient with the inevitable calamities of life that occur. وَتَتَّقُوا, and you are dutiful to Allah. So, وَإِن تَصْبِرُوا, be patient. If you are patient, وَتَتَّقُوا, and you are dutiful to Allah and mindful of Him, then this surely is the resolve that every Muslim should aspire to. That is the verse of the evening.
Jazakallah khair. Thanks, Matt. Very powerful ayah, and I think very relevant as well to the reverts, sometimes. And I think sometimes just on that point, I was going to say, sometimes people, they perhaps have this thing where they say, oh, especially now in today's society, sometimes people saying that maybe they're becoming Muslim for the wrong reasons, almost like doubting their sincerity. And like, the ayah shows that there is undoubtedly going to be tests for those people, and that those could be like tests of sincerity and all these kind of things. And I just think one of the main things is that people, especially, once people have embraced Islam, there needs to be a level of good suspicion about the person, right? In terms of like husn al-dhan, that they're doing it for the right reasons, even if the reason that led them to finding Islam was something that people might say, oh, it was because of a relationship, or it was because they had a lot of Muslim followers or something like this. But that does not necessitate, that they are necessarily insincere about their embrace of Islam.
Yeah, definitely.
So if we bring into the main topic, workplace challenges, I'll just start off. I'll share a very small story that I think is quite like powerful, and perhaps from my personal experience, something that is maybe one of the most important things, or perhaps there are other important things, but just in terms of when one becomes Muslim, obviously there's going to be struggles that they face, whether that is finding a place to pray, and all these kind of things. But if the one who's sincere and truly wants to get close to Allah and asks Allah sincerely, makes dua, like a sincere dua, maybe perhaps seeking out the times where dua is answered, for example, on Friday or between the adhan and the iqamah and these types of things. But if you sincerely ask Allah to aid you, especially in something that Allah has obligated upon you, then you should have good suspicion that Allah will answer that. And one example from my own experience of that is I was, when I was first Muslim, I was working at one point in a job that one of my family had actually got for me, and it happened to be in a film studio that was out in West London somewhere, a bit outside of London. And at the time, generally speaking, in a film studio, a massive film studio with many different places where many different films would be shot, you wouldn't really expect to find many Muslims. And so I was only quite new in the religion. I was trying to find places to pray, and I think actually I ended up praying in this kind of garden that was like outside, kind of hidden away, maybe hiding behind trees and stuff like this, and just praying outside. And I kind of made this excuse to go and pray Jum'ah. I said on Friday, look, I need to go out and get some lunch or something of this nature. And they let me go out on lunch. And I kept on making dua along this journey, and while I was working at this place, for Allah to make it easy for me to pray, for Allah to find me a place to pray. And then, subhanAllah, just like that, when I think when I came back, or I was at the studio or something like this random Egyptian brother approached me, and like there were no Muslims working in the whole of this studio apart from this one guy. And he said, oh, I saw you, by the way, going to this masjid on Jum'ah, and I'm actually working in this workshop right next door to the studio that you're working in. Anytime you need to pray, just come by and you can pray with me and we'll pray together. So, like, you would never think in that situation, like there's going to be a Muslim there and you're just going to be able to pray or whatever. But it just shows that, really, if you strive and you ask Allah, Allah can facilitate in ways that you really wouldn't imagine.
Yeah, definitely.
You've reminded me of some difficulties I've had with because of course a lot of jobs don't involve actually being in a fixed place. I had one job when I was working in malls, and finding all sorts of places to pray in car parks. And I had a spell of trying to pray in the Marks and Spencer's changing rooms, with the fitting rooms where you try and clothes, and they said no, you can't pray here anymore. And outside in the snow, all types of places. Alhamdulillah. but not
I
with
think,
not with the positive outcome you had. Apart from
yeah.
when I did work in an office, I was quite surprised to find out that in the UK anyway, it's a law to provide you with this space. So often we need to just ask for our rights because I remember being in an office building, center of Birmingham, 8 stories high, and not a single person in the building prayed. And it reminds me of that because when Matt mentioned from the ayah that you'll hear words of abuse from Christians and Jews and polytheists, often one of the difficulties we have going into a workplace is there are already Muslims there who perhaps don't pray or don't do the
Mm.
things that you're actually trying to do. So, but then to my surprise, the boss was like, "Okay, let's find a place for you." Found a room which they allocated for the prayer in this 8 story building. Seemed to be very concerned and very helpful in terms of like, is this all right? Is this what you need? And was the only person in that 8 story building using that room, but they made it very comfortable, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. What about yourself, Matt? Have you got any prayer stories, particularly at work?
I have a few, but they're not maybe not as interesting or as good as your guys' stories. Yeah, so when I accepted Islam, I was working I worked as a pizza delivery boy, actually delivering pizzas. So it wasn't really an issue for me to just go and pray. I would have a little room where I would get changed for work, and this is like a general room. People used it for different stuff, mainly just to hang their jackets and that kind of thing. It's like a cloaks room or something. But anyway, so I would just pray in there. I just announced to everyone that I was Muslim. It turns out that some of them were Muslim that I didn't even know at the time, but some of them were actually Muslim as well. So I just told everyone I'm Muslim and I need a place to pray. And I was a bit bold, I think, back then, maybe too bold. But yeah, I just prayed in this little cloakroom, really. That's what I used to do. That's when I worked as in the pizza delivery game. Once I moved and I moved to Birmingham, which was maybe a few months after that. Yeah, I was working in an office, and yeah, it's a similar situation to what you guys described. You're trying to find a place to pray here and there and pray on this floor and this room, and it became quite awkward. And we didn't actually tell our boss that, because it was me, my brother, and another brother. There were 3 of us, and we didn't actually tell our boss that we were Muslim. So some of us would pray here, some of us would pray there, and then the boss would come around looking for us, couldn't find us, and where is this? Where is your brother? Where is this person? And yeah, it would became kind of like a game, like a funny sort of game. But one time the boss came up to me, and I just told the boss, I just said, look, we're Muslim, and we need to pray. So the boss goes to me, no, you're not Muslim. It was a lady. I said, what? No, we are Muslim. We are. She's like, no, you're not Muslim. I said, no, we are Muslim. She says, no, you're not Muslim, because when you pray, you don't wear a hat, and you don't have a mat. That's actually what she said, and it turns out that strange reasoning, but that it turns out that her husband was Muslim. She was a non-Muslim. Her husband was a Muslim, some guy from Turkey, I think, some Turkish man.
Okay.
Yeah.
You clearly had a hat.
Yeah. So so she was convinced, I guess, that if you don't have a hat and you don't have a mat, then you're not really praying properly. And then I worked in a temp agency very briefly. And yeah, I just asked, is there a prayer room? And they said, no, but you can use this very, very small room. It was just about big enough to pray in, literally to do the bowing, the ruku' and the sujood. It was just enough. Yeah. So yeah, I was able to pray there as well. So I haven't really had any major difficulties in that regard.
One of my problem stories was in a temp agency, because the problem with temp agencies is they can get rid of you without any reason, like your temporary contract's over. And I remember I was praying in this way. It was a warehouse that they'd placed me in, and it wasn't the praying. I got a warning about doing wudu because the warning is like, we've heard you're doing ablutions in the bathroom. It makes mess. I was thinking there's a lot more messes that happen in that bathroom than me doing wudu. Um, a couple of days later, I was fired from that job. But alhamdulillah, temp agency, you get another job the next week. But the nicest relief I had related to prayer was I was working in, like I said, I was working in malls and things where I was actually buying gold, and my bosses and the owners of the company Jewish. And I was in one place, and of course we're in a setting within a shop, and the shop has a manager, which was completely unrelated to our company. So I asked them, I need a place to pray. She said, "Oh, no problem. You can use my office." I thought, "Oh, thank you very much." She was having her lunch, went upstairs, used her office, prayed. Next day, my boss calls me up and he says, and he was so apologetic. He said, "I'm really sorry about this. You know, that the manager of that shop has called up and said she was quite disturbed by the fact that you were praying in her office." I said, but she told me to pray in her office." He goes, "I know." He said, "She's the one that told you to pray there, and she said she's disturbed. It's not on." I said, "Oh, it's fine. I can pray in the street. I don't mind." Like, yeah, it's don't worry, we're not going to place you in that place anymore. And so in the future, because we used to get placed in all sorts of different towns, he placed me in different towns and not that town which had the offensive lady, which was nice. That's a nice experience.
Well, this is one of the beauties of Islam, is that you can pray anywhere, like the Prophet
Yeah, true.
said, "وَجُعِلَتْ لِيَ الْأَرْضُ مَسْجِدًا
Mm.
وَطَهُورًا." The earth, the whole earth has been made a place of prayer for me. So that's the beauty, one of the many beauties of Islam, is
Yeah,
that you can literally pray anywhere.
yeah, very
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, I think when I was first Muslim, to be honest, like in the first, I'd say 2 years that I was Muslim, that's one of the things that kept me very like grounded to some extent, or at least just, practicing the religion, because obviously, as we know in the West, that there's some people that embrace Islam and then they have a difficult time, with aspects of the religion, whether it's because of work or family and stuff, and so they might find it difficult to establish the prayer. I think often the work is one of the things that I've seen from some reverts, that they struggle because they're like, they kind of use the work as kind of an excuse. But from my own personal experience, like you were mentioning, Matt, about being quite bold, and I think just because of that aspect of my personality, I was just like, and because I knew that you could just pray anywhere, I would just pray absolutely anywhere. So like if I was in London, like in the middle of the road or whatever, and I saw, oh, it's Dhuhr time, I would just go and like, I'd sometimes just pray in the middle of the street somewhere, and like I didn't necessarily know where masajid were or this or that, whatever. And sometimes, they're quite spaced out in London. So I would just literally like try and make wudu wherever I could and just like go and pray, wherever, use my app and just kind of pray. And I think that kind of, the way the salah is, it just keeps you with that constant connection to Allah, So I think I found that very, very useful, and so even at workplaces, I would try and do that as well.
Yeah, definitely. Just a few practical tips. What Karl mentioned about the whole wudu thing.
Changing room.
And then not the changing room. If you need to make wudu in a place such as at work, public bathroom, then practical tip: make wudu before you go to work. A full wudu, wash your feet, put your socks on, and then you can wipe over your socks. That way, you won't be washing your feet in the sink. That seems to be an issue with quite a few people. So if you can avoid that. Also, make wudu, and just make wudu before you go to work, and maybe you will keep your wudu throughout the day, so you won't need to make wudu at work. there are just a few practical tips to help people out with that one.
And also the sunnah helps you in terms of like the amount of water that was used in wudu by the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a small amount, not much more than a little plastic cup's worth, right? And if you use that little bit of water, you're not gonna have spillages all over the place because you're not using that much water anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
I think also in terms of wudu as well, is like sometimes people feel that it's a must to clean every part 3 times, whereas you can do, once. And if you were to like be in a situation where for example, you're in a work and you have very limited time, you lost your wudu, but like you said, you made it, so you've already got socks on, so you can wipe over your socks, literally with a very small amount of water, like Karl was saying, and just wiping each, part or washing it one time, wudu becomes something very easy to do in pretty much anywhere, right?
Yeah.
Even with doing it 3 times, I mean, I guess if I was to use a cup of water half this size, it's especially once you get used to doing so, pouring a bit of water into your hand enough to wash the limb. You can wash each limb 3 times with that much water. It's enough.
Yeah. What about Matt, in terms of places that perhaps one should avoid if you're in a workplace, whatever that workplace might be, or maybe someone's a new Muslim and they're working in a workplace that really they want to be getting out of, but what kind of places should one avoid?
Well, if someone accepts Islam and they are working a job which is in of itself a prohibited job, meaning that the person working there, the employee, they have to do prohibited things, haram things. For example, working in a bar, selling alcohol, or working as a waiter, perhaps serving the alcohol, working as a butcher, selling pork, for example, working in a bank dealing with interest, then these kind of jobs, absolutely, Muslim has to leave them. And there's no way that a Muslim can do this kind of job. Absolutely. They have to leave it. They should quit their job, put their trust in Allah, and be certain that Allah will replace it with better. Allah says in the Quran, وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَل لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. Whoever is dutiful to Allah, Allah will make a way out for that person. And also the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّكَ لَن تَدَعَ شَيْئًا لِلَّهِ إِلَّا مَنْ تَرَكَ شَيْئًا لِلَّهِ عَوَّضَهُ اللَّهُ خَيْرًا مِنْهُ. أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. The Prophet said عليه الصلاة والسلام, that if you leave something for Allah's sake, Allah will replace it with something better for you. So you should have that faith and have that reliance in Allah, that Allah will replace that job with something better. And there are, countless stories, how many reverts you speak to and how many Muslims you speak to who have left prohibited, clearly, haram jobs, prohibited jobs, and they left them for Allah's sake, and Allah replaced them with something better. So if the job in of itself is haram, or it requires the employee to do prohibited acts, then they should leave it straight away. However, if the job is a job which is halal in of itself, a job which is allowed to do, for example, teaching or working in an office, something like working in a shop selling things which are allowed to be sold, then if that job has some haram elements in it, then the job itself is fine. But the haram elements, you should try your best to avoid them. You should try your best to avoid them as much as you can. And if you're not able to really avoid them, then likewise you should try and leave the job. And Allah will replace it with something better, no doubt.
Yeah.
And of course, there's the next ayah of the one you mentioned, وَيَرْزُقُهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ. Allah will give you provision from where you won't even imagine.
Exactly. Yeah.
We don't know where Allah's provision will come from, and
Yeah.
sometimes provision isn't, and sorry, a lot of the time provision isn't always in jobs. How many people left the job out of wanting to do their duty to Allah, and maybe they started a business or and got much better than what a job would have given them anyway, which they would never have imagined before.
Yeah. But it's kind of a sad thing that I've heard from a number of reverts is that when they accept Islam, what they're doing is actually a halal job. There's nothing
Mm,
wrong with the job itself, but because maybe the job might maybe have some elements which are not good or that a Muslim maybe should stay away from or something like that. They were told by Muslims, just quit your job, quit your
mm,
career. And these are people who had actual real careers in high paying jobs, but they were told just to quit them. And then they found out a lot later on down the line that actually they could have kept these jobs and these jobs were actually
yes,
halal, and they were told to quit them. So they just followed, and they followed these
mm.
people, and they were told, and they did what they were told to do, but it was actually the wrong advice they were given.
Speaking
Yeah,
of
that's
that,
why
then,
that's why
how to make
and
sure you get the right advice?
yeah, that's why if you're not sure, things like selling alcohol, these kind of things, working
Mm,
in the bar, it's
Yeah.
clear,
yeah, sure.
clear cut, or it should be. But there are other things where if you're not sure, you need to speak to people of knowledge. You need to try and speak to a
Mm,
scholar, speak to imam, speak to students of knowledge, people who are really learned, so they can give you clarity on this issue. And don't be quick to make massive life-changing decisions such as
mm,
those.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
my advice.
I think there's some things, like one challenge, or maybe two challenges I can think of there in terms of like someone who's got maybe, the origin is that this job is halal, but maybe for example, it's difficult for them to go to Salatul Jum'ah because that sometimes can be one of the issues with jobs, for example, in the West. Or maybe they have concerns about mixing with the opposite sex or something like this. What are ways that perhaps people could, or in your experience, and I have my own experiences in that regard, but what are ways that people could kind of navigate that in your experience?
I think that you have to. I don't want to speak without any knowledge here, but you need to understand what is mixing in terms of what is the prohibited type of mixing. Because there's a type of, when we go to the shop, there's a certain type of incidental um, meeting of different sexes, which isn't a working together type of mixing.
Hmm.
So we need to make sure that when we talk about, okay, I've got a mixing in my workplace. Do you really have actual mixing where you're sitting alongside the person, having to work with them as a colleague, as a partner in work, or is it that more incidental? There's other sexes around the place, but it's not actual mixing. So that's the point. You have to understand that it is mixing in the first place.
Hmm. Hmm.
Avoiding core issues, like if you're in a situation where, say for example, you work in an office and there are members of the opposite sex around, then like I said, you try your best as much as possible. You fear Allah as much as you can. Things like avoiding khalwa, which is to be alone with a woman, absolutely, whether that's in a lift or in a room or some other space or a bathroom. You should avoid khalwa, being isolated with them. You should obviously lower your gaze as well. That's generally, not just in the workplace, but everywhere. Muslims should lower their gaze as much as they can. Lower the gaze from the opposite sex, and lower the gaze from prohibited things. Yeah, and also
You,
the handshakes as well.
you
Avoid them.
remind me of the handshakes.
Yeah, the
Uh,
handshakes as well. Those
Has
kind of
anyone
things
else wore a
should be avoided.
bandage to avoid handshakes, or is it just me?
No.
I know someone who I actually had a Saudi friend. He said I think
Uh,
he did like a CELTA in like India or something like that, and
mm,
there was like I don't know a female instructor or something like this, and he said like I don't know I think for him because he's raised in Saudi Arabia that he doesn't have many of these incidences. So he found it awkward to be like, oh, I don't shake hands or something like that. So I think he did a similar thing, like he pretended his hand was injured, or he kind of just looked down at his hand and went, oh, I'm sorry. And there it was.
I've bandaged my hand for a job interview once, maybe more than once, but you can't bandage your hand every day for actually working. So yeah, I remember one time actually, different people take it in different ways, but we can't really control that. I remember going to, as a temp, going to one workplace and saying, sorry, I can't shake your hand. And then this lady announced to the whole office as we were going around, this is Karl, he doesn't shake hands. And I didn't explain very well that I can't shake your hand, but I can shake his hand.
Yeah.
And then so other times it's been, some women have and Western women have respected the fact that when explained to them why I'm not going to shake your hand, they actually respected the fact that, oh, that's nice. That the fact that you don't actually want to touch me.
Well, I had a story. I was working in a call center, and we were like, it was one of these call centers whereby you call people, either cold calls or they've given money to charity, and you're calling them basically to set up some kind of subscription to donate to one of the these major charities, like whether it's shelter or some of these water aid, for example. And I think when I was leaving the job, the woman who was a manager, I kind of said to her, like, yeah, I'll be leaving the job now. And she went, I think she went to shake my hand. I said, oh no, I don't really shake hands. And so she just jumped and hugged me. So that was quite awkward. So she went the opposite way. She was like, well, if you don't shake hands, that means you just hug. So yeah. So that was a bit awkward, but
I think well, there are a few ways you could do it. You could do the old keep your hands in your pockets the whole time. No, that's a joke. Don't do that. Or you could you could just explain, like what Karl mentioned. It's all about like dawah and interacting with Muslims. Interacting with non-Muslims, especially in the West. You have to use as much hikmah as you can, and you have to, when you actually explain the reasons behind things, that's when they tend to respect it a lot more. If you just refuse to shake their hand and don't back it up with an explanation or a reason, I think a lot of people would find that rude. Some people will be very respectful and just say, I respect that, but some people might find it very rude. I mean, even if they did find it rude, it's not really an issue. But in terms of dawah and giving them a good impression of Muslims and Islam, then it would be, if you can, and because all situations are different, if you have the time to just quickly explain some of the wisdoms behind why we don't shake hands with the opposite sex, then I think that would be a good thing to do.
Yeah,
and it needs to, I mean, especially when they don't understand if it's not a common thing. I mean, if other people who are Muslim are doing it without the explanation, you do just seem like the rude one.
Yeah, I mean, this is an issue with so many things, isn't it? Where they'll say, "Oh, but Ahmed over there, he shakes our hand," and Amr over there, he shakes our hands. Why can't you shake our hands? It kind of, sometimes other Muslims make it more difficult for you.
Yeah, no doubt. It's like I think it was actually the same job. There was one of the managers who was a Muslim guy, and he kept on saying, no, just we're going down to the pub or something like this. Come along. I go. I just drink orange juice. Come down. Like it'll be fun. Like, so I kindly obviously excuse myself, but I think you have different situations. You try and explain it with wisdom. It was actually at one of the same job. there was like I said, they ran different campaigns for water aid and stuff, and there was one that was Christian aid. So I was, you know, avoiding working on that campaign. You know, I basically just said no, I don't really want to work on it, and they respected it. But it got to a point where they I can't remember why it was, but they really wanted me to work on this campaign. And so one of the managers was trying to convince me basically to work on the campaign. And I think I was in like one of these, you know, staff rooms, or, you know, where people would eat and stuff like this. And the manager was really trying to convince me. And then there was another employee who I think was actually like Turkish, but they weren't practicing at all. And I was trying to explain, and we're kind of going around in circles. And then that Turkish person basically just went up to the manager, and it was like terrible dawah if you think about it in some way. But they basically went, yeah, look, he's not going to work on the campaign because he thinks if he is, he'll go to hell. And I was like, yeah. And I didn't say anything then, yeah. But the manager was just like, oh, okay. So yeah, definitely not going to work on the campaign then, and kind of just left me to it. So at the same time, I was like, well, that's a bit rubbish dawah, but still got me kind of out of the situation. So I wasn't really, you know, complaining, but at the same time, you know, I was like, well, shouldn't have said that, you know. I was trying to bring the hikmah of and you know, reason, but
you know, what you mentioned about your manager drinking the orange juice, it reminds me of an incident in one workplace. And that incident reminded me of the ayah, وَلَن تَرْضَى عَنْكَ الْيَهُودُ وَالنَّصَارَى حَتَّى تَتَّبِعَ مِلَّتَهُمْ, that the Jews and Christians won't be pleased with you until you follow their way. I was in a workplace, and they used to say to me, oh, you know, why didn't you come out? Because there was a lot of going out in the recruitment agency, you know, business. You know, come out. You know, I forget the name of the girl. She comes out with us. She just doesn't drink. She just has an orange juice. So just come out, have an orange juice, just to meet all the colleagues and that sort of thing. I said, no, I'm not going to come out to the what was it, to a bar or whatever, a nightclub. And remember when that young girl did leave the workplace, and I was overhearing the colleagues speak. And they said, oh, you know, she never really fitted in. You know, she didn't drink when she used to come out. So, you know, the girl was doing the best she could to fit in and making certain compromises. And at the end of the day, it didn't really please those people that she was trying to please anyway. And you know, for me, it was a reminder that, you know, it's not, you know, you may strive to please people, but you will never reach their pleasure. So
yeah,
you're better off just pleasing Allah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, all of this just is an encouragement for Muslims who are working in these types of environments to try their utmost to work somewhere else, and to maybe stay in the same profession, same line, the same line of work, but try and work in an environment which is a lot more
I think
facilitating for them and their Islam.
I think also it's like a thing of, you know, also one thing that can be very good for people, particularly in the West, is perhaps trying to, like you said, maybe staying in the same career, same field, but looking into how one could maybe start their own business in that field or become self-employed. Because obviously once you're now the boss, you can kind of control that. And I think I was maybe listening to a podcast or something quite recently, one of the brothers, you know, one of the Muslim brothers who podcasts and stuff. I can't remember who it was. Maybe I can't remember, but they were just mentioning that you know, this individual, he had his own business and stuff like this, and he now was basically in charge, and he would literally like say to his staff, even the non-Muslims, like, right, we're doing this, that, whatever, and they would kind of just respect it, you know, because obviously he's in charge, he's the boss, so he's not really going to get in the way. So I think, you know, all those issues like we mentioned, like praying, going to Jum'ah, all of those things. If one has their own business or they're self-employed within their career, that kind of, it puts them in the driving seat, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
times have changed. I don't know, like 20 years ago, I became Muslim in 2005. I think it's quite different back then. From what I understand, it's a lot more different now, and a lot of companies and businesses, they're a lot more accommodating to these kinds of things, especially with regards to prayer and like Karl said, like giving people their space to pray and these kinds of things. So I think it is a lot better than what it used to be.
Yeah.
But then you have all those other issues that we spoke about and you have to deal with and try and navigate around.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we got a question from Tommy, but I'm going to leave that for a little bit. We're going to go now. Tommy is asked another question again, and we're going to try and dedicate a little bit to answering this question. It's not on the topic, but it's a good topic, and it's more so to do with inheritance. But maybe that is also a topic we can cover in more detail. But we'll share Tommy's question in a second.
Inheritance is my most difficult topic.
Yeah, but in terms of the next section, which is the revert news or recent events, the thing that I wanted to share or that I saw recently, I don't know if I can let me see if I can try and present it, is we've had the embracing of Islam of this man Michael Page. You can see that there, guys. That's his Instagram there, and he's actually made a video that he's put on his official Instagram of him embracing Islam. So this happened just this week. So
I've just realized I
alhamdulillah.
did see the video on the channel's thoughts.
Oh,
right?
okay. Yeah, I think so. So it's
put
on
it
his
out,
main
right?
channel, and you've got a lot of people,
Alhamdulillah.
congratulating him for entering Islam. And to be honest, we've seen quite a lot of people within this kind of UFC world, the fighting world, so to speak, embracing Islam. And I don't know if it's because of this or not, but I've seen people like Joe Rogan mention that when he sees people like Khabib and stuff like this, or Habib, however you want to call him, there's a lot of discipline that they see. And I guess if you're a fighter or if you're one of these professional athletes, that, discipline is something that is probably quite admired or something. I'm not sure if that is why the case. Any thoughts there, guys, to weigh in on that, or maybe just to welcome the brother to Islam?
Well, also companions, isn't it? Because like you said, if it's something that's happening in the fighting field, and a lot of colleagues and friends are entering Islam, then you're going to learn from them and be interested in, maybe interested in what they're doing.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah. And I've seen, like, even there's some, I think there was a female UFC fighter who converted to Islam. There was another guy who was in Russia or something, Canadian American guy. So a lot of them are, coming to the religion. But it's one of those things as well, that the field of boxing and UFC as well, you get into a bit of a precarious path in terms of the whole hitting in the face and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, may Allah make it easy for all of them.
Probably
So
relevant to the world of work as well. I mean, if that's their challenge as well, isn't it? Once they're in a career which is perhaps problematic, and they've got the huge challenge of it being a very lucrative career as well. So may Allah help them.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, definitely. I think that's one of the and we've seen that with people like the brother Loon, and other people who are in those industries. Also, the brother Napoleon, who's now living in Riyadh. He quit the whole music industry and whatever, and Allah replaced it with, businesses and other things and stuff like this. So I think it returns back to what Matt said about, once you embrace Islam, and then leaving these problematic fields and having the trust in Allah that Allah is in control and that He will place it with something better.
Yeah, definitely.
So, gents, now brings us to the word association section. Your not so favorite section, my favorite section, because I don't have to do
That's
it.
why I got my cringe face on.
Well, maybe one day you guys can do it and put me on the spot.
It's because it's so on the spot. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. So first one, let's go for Karl. Are you ready, Karl?
You want one word, right?
I think I'll give you a word or a sentence response. That's
Okay,
what
word
I'm
or a
looking for.
sentence. All right.
All right,
I'll
word or a
limit
sentence.
myself to word sentence. Here we go.
All right, you ready?
Ready.
Beard.
Long? No, sorry.
Long.
That was a terrible answer.
We'll take that. Long beard. Matt, we've got for you colleagues.
Treat them well.
Treat them well. That's good. Let's go for Karl. I'll give you
I'll
lunch.
do better this time.
Lunch.
Prayer time.
Okay.
Unless if it's Jummah, then 2-hour lunch.
Sorry, what was the connection? Prayer time, lunch?
Because that's normally if you haven't arranged a special prayer time, then you got to do it at lunchtime. Lunch hour.
Oh.
Yeah.
Lunch break.
Unless if
prayer
it's Jummah, 2-hour lunch hour. Sometimes.
All right. Matt, for you, I am going to say professionalism.
Being honest with yourself, with your colleagues, and above all, with your Lord.
Excellent. And let's say the final one for Karl. Let's say let's say success.
Success. Islam is a means to success and not a barrier to success.
Excellent. Excellent. Great. So now we're kind of drawing to a close. We didn't mention to the viewers as well that we've decided to make these sessions slightly longer. Originally, we were going to go for about half an hour, but we're going to try and make them around 40-50 minutes. And so we're coming to the end, but I do want to, even if we go over the 50 minutes, hit Tommy's question. So I'm going to put it up on the screen. You guys can see it. I'll read it out nonetheless. Tommy says, what is the ruling on inheriting from non-Muslim relatives? And what do we do if they've left something for us in their will? Barakallah feekum wa feekum barakallah, Tommy. Matt, I'm gonna, and Karl, let you guys weigh in on this, but it's interesting because when I first came to Mecca, there was actually one of the things that I asked one of the scholars, because at the time I had a small amount of money left to me by one of my grandparents in a will. And I think, maybe you guys can go into more detail on this, but there's a differentiation in Islam between inheritance, which is wirath, and a will, which is a wasiyah. And so even a Muslim can give up to a third of their will or their wasiyah, right? Even to, a non-Muslim or in charity or anything like this. So I think what I was advised at the time by one of the scholars who now has passed away, may Allah have mercy on him, Sheikh Muhammad Ajlan, who was one of the scholars in Mecca. He said that, if it's in a will, and especially I think it was such a minimal amount, it wasn't even equal to a third. He said there's no issue with it at all. And there's other ways as well. For example, if one of your family was to take this and then give it to you as a gift or something like this. I'm sure there's other ways, but these are things that one should perhaps ask a scholar as well. But the reason I am just narrating that is because it's something that I experienced. I went to Sheikh Mohammed Ajlan and he told me in my situation in that case that there was no issue with it. So I don't know if you can enlighten us as well, Matt or Karl.
Yes, similar to what you said. In Islam, you have al-irth, you have the mirath, which is the inheritance, and then you have something called a wasiyah, which is a will. When a Muslim passes away, their wealth is subject to the laws of inheritance, and it is divided amongst certain inheritors, and they get certain amounts based upon certain conditions. But a Muslim and the Muslim who passes away, that's what happens to their wealth. They don't really have any say in that, although they can leave a will, and that is like a written document stating that this amount of money goes to this person and so on, or to this charity or whatever. And this can be up to a third of a Muslim's wealth. So yeah, that's definitely the case. I asked the question to Sheikh Saleh Sindi many years ago when I was in Medina, maybe 2009. This must have been. He was teaching us in the faculty of the university, and I asked him because one of my relatives, it was actually my father. He phoned me one day and he said, "You know, I've heard that you can't inherit from me because you're a Muslim." I don't know where he got that information. If he looked it up online or something, I was kind of shocked. I was like, "Oh, yeah, maybe you're right, Dad." Because I know that there's a famous hadith where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "La yadith al-Muslim al-kafir wa al-kafir al-Muslim." Muslims don't inherit from non-Muslims, and non-Muslims don't inherit from Muslims. So I was aware of the hadith. So I asked Sheikh Saleh Sindi about this, and he said that if it's a wasiyah, then that is different. If it's a wasiyah and it's written clearly in a will that this person leaves a certain amount of money, then yeah, it's jaiz. And he said it's allowed, and he said it's he texted me. I remember the text message because he said he would look into it and then get back to me. So I asked him the question, and about a week later he texted me and he said تجوز الوصية بالاتفاق. He said it's consensus of scholars that this kind of thing is allowed. So if it's mentioned specifically in a will, in a wasiyah, then Allahu A'lam, you can take that wealth. The only issue is whether that wealth is more than a third, or that's an issue which might need to be looked into further. Allahu A'lam. That's what I know about it.
Yeah. I seem to remember, but I wouldn't quote me on this. I seem to remember Sheikh Mohammed Ajlan. He was, I think, indicating that even in this situation, it doesn't necessarily have to be a third, because obviously for a Muslim, your wasiyah can only be up to a third, right? But for the non-Muslim, that's not something that they're necessarily, bound to in terms of them. But like Matt said, it's something that should be researched fully when you're in that situation, or even before that situation, for benefit. So maybe we can look into that and find out before the next episode, inshallah. Any comments on that as well, Karl?
Really nothing to add to what you've mentioned there. And yeah, I think with all these type of things, it's often very good to ask specifically about it, about the specific circumstances. I remember one time, this is not the same issue at all, but this is what holds me back in applying things generally. I asked one brother in Birmingham, actually. He's passed away now, and very learned brother, someone who's knowledgeable brother. And I asked him, can I sell my saxophone? Because I had a saxophone from before Islam. And now, if I'm talking about my own saxophone, hypothetically, I don't have a saxophone anymore. But now, if I was talking about my own saxophone, I know I can't sell it, and I know I can't take the money from that saxophone. But when I asked him, he said, I'm not going to tell you what to do with your wealth. Ask the scholars. So you know, it was a nice you know, learning that sometimes things can be quite obvious in terms of what we've learned from before and applying it in a general sense, but it's always a good thing to look into the specifics and ask about the
Absolutely.
specifics.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Jazakallah khair. So hopefully, Tommy, that, you know, to some degree answers, you know, his question. And I think, you know, it shows as well that it's not always like maybe Karl said is there. These things do need to be looked into. And sometimes, you know, you need to go to the students of knowledge and the scholars and ask these kind of questions. And especially there might be finer details pertaining to your situation that should be included when asking those questions as well, instead of applying general things. So yeah, final thoughts on the workplace. I have one thing that I just wanted to say. I apologize if, you know, any sisters do watch this episode, because we kind of skipped out. We had some contribution, or one sister who was posting in asking, you know, to highlight, for example, the differences between the brothers and the sisters. And I think to some extent it's a little bit more tricky for us to cover as brothers, but obviously you do maybe have things in the workplace like the hijab, and, you know, perhaps we can dedicate a whole episode to things like the hijab, and within that, you know, cover workplace as well. And also it would be good for any sisters out there to comment on the videos, to maybe you know, message or on, you know, either the YouTube or the Instagram. And one idea that Karl had was to actually have maybe a section where we can read out various different contributions from listeners and people watching, and you know, engage with us. So that's something that I would look to do definitely if we have more people who are writing in with their experiences, or they want to share some things and ask questions, like our friend Tommy here. Jazakallah khair, Tommy. And other than that, thank you everyone for tuning in. Thanks once again, Jazakallah khair, to Karl and to Matt. And we'll stay tuned for the next episode. We'll not be here next Saturday, but the Saturday after, which is, I think, when is that? Some mid-December perhaps, or the beginning of December, maybe the 14th or something. And any final thoughts from you guys, Karl and Matt?
Final thought is Allah's promise is true. So thinking of the ayat that Matt mentioned earlier, for sure, if you fear Allah and do your duty to Him, He will provide for you from where you would never have imagined.
Jazakallah khair. Anything from your side, Matt?
I would say that if providing that your job is halal, first of all, your job is allowed, then first of all, you are blessed by Allah. That's the first thing. So be grateful for that, because there are many people who don't have work. So if you have a job which is halal, be grateful for that. And Allah increases those who are grateful to Him. That's the first thing I would say. Second thing I would say is, in Allah yuhibbu min al-abdi idha amila amalan an yutqinahu. Allah loves that when someone does a job, that they do it and they perfect that job and do it as best as they can. So that's encouragement for all of us to work hard and do the best job that we can when we're working.
Excellent. Jazakallah khair, Matt. Jazakallah khair, Karl, once again. Thank you to everyone who has been watching and has watched. We've run a little bit over our 40-50 minutes, but we're going to try and be flexible with this. Please do spread the word. Let any other reverts know. Send us your experiences and your thoughts and your comments. And we'll see you in another 2 weeks. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.